It's the special Easter Sunday. Welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels. I'd like to start with giving a big shout out to Israel Adesanya, aka the Style Bender, for reclaiming his UFC middleweight championship. We're incredibly proud of you. Nigeria is proud of you. And of course, indeed, Africa is proud of you. A happy Easter celebrations to all the Christian faithfuls all around the world. Even as we celebrate the death and the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, let us also take time to reflect on how we can be better humans in the society. Just like Christ has risen and we're better off for it, the prices of petrol is about to rise, and we're not quite sure that we'll be better off for it. And that is the conversation we'll be having today. The federal government has officially announced that the fuel subsidy will be removed after June 2023. And experts believe that the prices of petrol might rise from the current 185 naira to up to 600 naira. So, is this best for the nation at this point in time? What are the pros of removing subsidy and what are the cons? The Minister of Finance has said that the federal government has also secured $800 million to give to 50 million most impoverished Nigerians. What are the modalities in place to actually share that palliative? To have this conversation, I have with me in the studio an energy policy analyst, Adiola Yusuf. Welcome to the program.
My pleasure.
And also a legal practitioner, Mobola G. Oriola. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So we're talking about subsidy removal. First of all, let's just dive straight into it. Let's look at how much we've spent. Let's look at the figures, right? So, from 2005 to 2021, the federal government has spent about 13.69 trillion. That's a huge amount of money that could be used for capital projects. In 2022 alone, the NNPC spent about $10 billion just in the year 2022, right? So we understand why the government needs to save money from removing the subsidy. However, there are certain modalities that are still not in place, like we do not have any refinery running. So can you tell us about the timing of this and how it will affect the common masses, Mobolaji?
Okay, so I think it's very important that we understand what subsidy is in the first place, because I think a lot of Nigerians are not yet sensitized on what subsidy is. If you sample opinions, people just think the government just wants to increase the pump price of petrol. But basically and there's another argument about we have crude oil in Nigeria. Why do we have fuel scarcity and issues around that? So first, let's understand that the crude oil that we have in Nigeria, we don't have the capacity to break it down into PMS, AGO, and the rest. And so we sell it wholesale like that, and we export it. Now, the petrol that you and I use in our cars and our generators and things like that are imported into the country. So the crude oil we have in Nigeria is not broken down into the petrol that I use and you use. The government sells it and then earns foreign exchange from that. And then the government now, and also with the NNPC, now imports petrol into the country. Now, the landing costs of that petrol in Nigeria, landing cost basically is the world oil prices, the price plus cost of moving a freight and so on, is roughly about 300, about 400 naira. And so the government is like, look, this is a bit expensive for the average Nigerian to afford. So let us pick a price that we think is reasonable for the average Nigerian to afford. And then that difference, we will not pay that difference. So the average Nigerian pays 185 naira per liter, and then the landing cost is about 300, 400. So that's about 200 and something plus, is what the government now pays. That is what is called subsidy. So let's establish that first.
Right.
Okay. So now the next issue is the government has now said, oh, that subsidy that I have been putting in place for some time, I want to now remove it. Why? The government is saying, firstly, I can no longer afford to pay that difference because I'm not earning enough. My resources, my revenue is dipping. Why is my revenue dipping? Because my major source of income is exporting crude oil. And the crude oil that I'm exporting, firstly, in terms of climate change, people are no longer demanding for it anymore. There's a shift from fossil energy to clean energy, 1, 2, and also prices of crude oil fluctuates from time to time. And then thirdly is sometimes you have a situation whereby there's pipeline vandalism and things like that. So that's basically the reason why the government is saying we want to remove subsidy. Now, in terms of whether this subsidy is here in terms of how it affects the public. I mean, I think we'll wait for subsequent questions on that.
All right, thank you very much. Bobolaji, now you're a legal practitioner, and time in, time out, we've seen a lot of governments say that, in fact, Buhari himself said that subsidy is a fraud, right? And 8 years down the line, he still subsidized Phil. So why is it that he lacks the political willpower to do it as at when he was supposed to do it? What exactly is happening?
Okay.
Adiola.
Adiola. Okay.
Adiola,
Thank
yes.
you. It is very, very important that before delving into that, build on the foundation laid by Mobolaji,
right,
and to do some kind of maybe clarification. One thing that is certain about Nigeria that everyone knows is that Nigeria is an oil-producing country. As at this moment that we are talking, it's still the biggest exporter of the products, producing on daily basis about 1.8 million barrels. So, because Nigeria has 4 refineries with cumulative capacity of 445,000 barrels, there is an arrangement in which every day 445,000 barrels, is allocated for that local refining. So, if those refineries are working, there will be less, pressure on Nigeria bordering about the international price of crude oil. Okay, so having said that, Nigerian couldn't, as we speak as well, none of the 4 refineries, is working. And these 445,000 barrels out of 1.8 million barrels, because at some point Nigeria was doing 2.2 million barrels. This 445,000 barrels is the one that is in charge of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. And this product, because Nigeria has that inability to refine it locally, there is an arrangement that NNPC entered into. They call it direct sales, direct purchase. But for a layman, journalists have been calling it, crude swap. So this 445,000 barrels is the one that they will just go into an arrangement with middlemen or refineries abroad. They take this out of the country, and those ones will supply, the amount of petroleum product that is, at equal to that to Nigeria. So because of the fact that every day Nigerian population is growing and the Nigerian demand for that product is growing, so there is a shortfall, just like I explained.
Right.
And this has been what Nigerians are preparing to something else. But let me talk of the subsidy removal now quickly. There are 4 perspectives to this, and it depends on who belongs to where. That to determine how we look at it. The first one is the social perspective. A lot of Nigerians, or a lot of people that have that perspective, believe that because Nigeria is an oil-producing country, everything that has to do with oil has to be free of charge. There are some people that believe that it has to be a social service. We have to just drive into a filling station and get this product. Those ones are those that belong to that, aspect. The second one are those that are looking at it from the prism of legal. Those want to tell you that based on the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill and the signing of that into an act by President Buhari, it has become illegal for Nigeria to keep spending money on fuel subsidy because, it is in that legal document that Nigerians shouldn't be wasting money. The third one are those that are looking at it from the economic perspective. Okay, a typical economic person will tell you that government has no business in business because from the analysis you have painted from 2015 to 2022, we are spending 13 trillion naira. You can't keep spending money. At the end of the day, if you look at it very, very well, not all Nigerians have cars. Not all Nigerians are using that product. You are just fueling, you are just subsidizing those that are, above others. Those that can, afford 2 cars, 3 cars, gen and all that. So those are the perspective people are looking at it. And it will depend on the way we are looking. But if I want to look at it generally, you will see that Nigeria has no money. This $800 million you are talking about, Nigerians want to go and get this money. Not that we have it in our pocket. You could see that Nigeria has been running budget deficits over and over again.
Right, right. And yes, it's good to throw out the figures. It's good to identify what the problem is. But I need us to really call a spade, right? We've all given the history of subsidy. We've all given the history of the evolution of this whole process. You've even talked about the Petroleum Act, right? But the big question remains. We've had a government in power for 8 years. How come that one refinery is not working.
Okay.
So can we talk about the corruption in the system that has prevented these refineries from working, and how can we sort of identify those elements, those key elements, so that the next government, we have a president-elect, so that the next government will know that Nigerians are aware of all of this sham going on?
Thank you very much for that question. Few years ago, I was in Houston, Texas, for the Offshore Technology Conference. And I was privileged to sit on the same table with one of the OEM, original asset manufacturers of the Port Harcourt refinery. And what those guys told me was that Nigerian approached them to come and, look at what they could do about Port Harcourt refineries. But the answer they gave was that they cannot do anything about it. Nigerian, they can't soil their names. And the reason for that is that, after completing those refineries, there are guidelines given to Nigeria, particularly when it has to do with turnaround maintenance. It's like a car. You have bought your car, you know that every six months, you need to be changing the engine, you need to be doing maintenance of that. So over the years during the military regime, Nigerians, despite the fact that we have been allocating huge amount of money, budgetary huge amount of money for that, turnaround maintenance, those assets were left unattended to. That is the corruption you are talking about. So now
to add to what you just said, sorry I'm interrupting you. Now, the facts are, in 2021, they approved 600 billion naira to repair the Port Harcourt refinery. 600 billion.
Okay, so the repair, there is a difference between repair and maintenance. Okay, so when it got to the level that those assets, even those that manufactured those assets could not come again, Nigeria couldn't get those guys to come and, maintain those assets because of the fact that they have left those assets unattended to for a long time, So what they have resorted to is to now say that they want to repair. In fact, there are a lot of contracts in Nigeria that I'm aware that the Nigerian government has entered into. There is a co-location in which, the government has asked the international oil companies to come and, establish refineries inside the location of those refineries, so that they will be able to be sharing the pipelines and other assets. So over the years, Nigeria has left these assets unattended to, and that is what has taken us to where we are today.
Okay, Adeola. Mobolaji,
help you with this.
Yeah, sure. I'm coming to that because we barely have, I think, about 6 minutes to the end of this segment, right? We've seen what is happening, and right now they've secured $800 million from the World Bank to share to 50 million vulnerable Nigerians. That's 10 million households, right? That is on the assumption that each household has 5 people, right? Yeah. One of the major issues we have in this country is the trust. There's a mistrust between the people and the people that are governing the people. There's a mistrust between the politicians and the citizens. And we've seen this even with the past palliatives that have happened, be it COVID or other incentives that, our federal government had claimed that, we've shared so and so amount of money to people. We don't know the modalities as which those people are selected. We don't know how they get their database. In fact, we have over 113 million poor Nigerians. We're the poorest nation. We're the nation with the highest number of poor people, right? So how did we even determine how many people are poor? And we just arrived at 50 million. So how can we ensure that this money trickles down to the most vulnerable in the society?
Okay, thank you. But I'm so sorry. I just want to quickly add on that refinery issue before I go into a question. There's so there was a committee set up by the former Minister of Petroleum under the Goodluck Jonathan administration, Dizeni Alice, and then the committee came out with a report that, look, the cost of refurbishing and putting these old refineries in place is as good as building brand new refineries. And so it did not make sense to set up new refineries, to repair the old refineries. That is one. Two, you must understand that certain people within and outside Nigeria are benefiting from the fact that we do not have refineries in this country. So imagine you own a refinery outside Nigeria, and your refinery is the major supplier of the petrol that I consume in the country. You're not going to let things happen the way they should happen. So when people say the government lacks the political will, it is because sometimes those who are for the government are less than those who are against the government. That's on that issue. Now, on the $800 million issue, I think, firstly, I don't know why there's a gap between the government policy and what people understand about the government policy. And I think that has to do with the orientation agency and other information parastatals under the federal government. I think they need to learn from private companies. If a private company wants to market goods and products and services, there's a way to ensure that every single Nigerian knows about their products. We all know about so many brands, but the government doesn't pay that much attention to informing Nigerians about it. Now, if you say you want to give $800 million dollars to 50 million Nigerians, we need to have verifiable data. Who are these people? And I think even before we even go into that, we have to look at, okay, we've done something like this before with the social investment programs. How many people were lifted out of poverty because of that cash transfer that you were doing? Yeah. And then compare it, and then bring it forward and look at today, okay, if the policy before did not really bring so many people out of poverty, why am I doing it again? What are the different things? What are the things I can do differently? One. Two, how can I sensitize Nigerians if truly this policy is going to really benefit Nigerians about the people who are benefiting from this? If you go to and meet international donors for grants, right, as an NGO, you must show them verifiable data that these are the people who want to give it. And after you finish giving it to them, you must then give them reports. And that's what I think the government should do to its people.
All right. We have a president-elect, and we'll most definitely have a new government very soon, because this current government is leaving. What do you think the president-elect, who is of the opinion that subsidy has to be removed? In fact, it was one of his campaign points that, yes, subsidy has to be removed. How do you think the new government can handle this issue?
Okay. Two things. Number one, through collaboration. Number two, through consultation. Let me talk of consultation first. Anytime I hear the government officials talk about a private refinery that's going to be commissioned very soon, that is the Dangote refinery, if I'm allowed to use that word, I feel so saddened because one of the meetings that I'm privileged to be, where Aliko Dangote was, and I asked him the question of, his motive for establishing that refinery. Remember that on the eve of former President Olusegun Obasanjo regime, he sold that refinery, and Aliko Dangote's company was the one that bought the Port Harcourt refinery. So when former President Yar'Adua came, Nigerians, they went to meet him and told him that it's not a rocket science. So right, eventually, to cut a long story short, he revoked that license from Dangote. And that was why Dangote said, he told us that was the reason he sat down. He felt so bad. And he felt that, okay, I can start a refinery from the scratch. Right. Now, is it not so unfortunate that government officials are now the one talking about Nigeria being out of these shackles because of the Dangote refinery? So consultation that I talk about and collaboration is that there is a problem. There is a problem ahead of this government. The president-elect has said that no going back on that. The labor union, NLC, has told the president that they should prepare for war. So that is why collaboration is very, and consultation is very important. Government, there's no way the government can do that all alone. There are people, just like he said, that are making money from this present situation. You need to talk with them on the same table so that at the end of the day, it's going to be a win-win situation.
All right. Thank you very much, Mobolaji, and of course, Adiola. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate you. Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds. We're still having our special Easter edition. Before we went on the break, we were discussing the subsidy removal and how this removal can benefit Nigerians and what the government can do to actually make sure that the palliatives that is being set in place actually trickles down to the people who really need it the most. And we just hope that at the end of the day, in the next coming months, we'll be able to navigate these tough waters and come out stronger. Right now, we want to move on to another important discourse. It's been over a month since the last presidential elections, and it seems like the election banter is not dying down anytime soon, especially on social media. People are resorting to the banter, and some people are not necessarily using civil language. We've seen cases of cyberbullying and intimidation, and nobody is spared. Name all the big names have had a fair share of some sort of attack on social media. To discuss this, I have with me a public affairs analyst, Seun Akiyemi. Welcome to the program. I also have a social commentator, Dakbo Adaramewa. Welcome to the program. So let's get straight into it. First of all, we need to understand post-election, cyberbullying and intimidation. What can be defined as cyberbullying to start with? What is the thin line between free speech and cyberbullying?
When you don't have the opportunity to speak freely, I think it's as simple as that. When you are not able to speak freely, and then because you are saying something, everyone is entitled to their opinion. And then more or less, once you are not committing a libel or slander, and then you are trying to speak, and then people are trying to shut you down, they are not allowing you to express your mind, then especially on social media, then that means you are a victim of cyberbullying. Okay, what are your thoughts, Dakbo?
Well, I think cyberbullying, it's all about the intent, really. The bullying is when you set out to say things to hurt people. Now, in an educated, shall we say, debate, I can't say things that can offend somebody, but, you know, that's not the intent. I'm trying to convey a different point. The upset is just by the way. I think that's usually where you draw the line. Okay, so let's get straight into the details, right? Very recently, we've seen that we have people that are obviously on two divides, you know. I remember when President Olusegun Obasanjo endorsed the candidacy of Peter Obi, he came under a lot of attacks from people who do not believe that Peter Obi was the best candidate for Nigeria. Yeah. On the flip side also, we've seen people that, you know, were attacked because they supported the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And we've also seen cases where even the spokesperson of these people use certain words, right, on social media. Of particular mention, you've even seen the way Fani Kayode tweets and the choice of words he uses. On the flip side, we've also seen the choice of words the obedience use when they are sort of trying to engage in a conversation that is supposed to be civil. Right? Yeah. Very recently, Professor Wole Soyinka came under attack for his comments on the dirty speech. You understand? So, and you now see young people who tend to sort of even forget the legacy that, you know, Professor Wole Soyinka has. And that is not to say that he cannot be sort of opposed. Don't get me wrong. But when you now see people using certain words and sort of, you know, almost, permit me to use the word, rubbish him, right? As opposed to saying that we do not agree with you in a civil manner. You know, then we begin to question the intent and everything. So what are your thoughts on the recent heated political arguments on Twitter especially?
Well, for me, I think one is quite sad how people have reduced important conversation on social media to ethnicity and then religious divides. We have, don't let me say we, they have forgotten, they've forgotten the issues and now focus more on, oh, you're a Yoruba person, you're an Igbo person, because you said this, you'll be attacked vehemently. So, for instance, case of Professor Wole Soyinka is entitled to his opinion. And then young boys now attacking him, use some vile languages, I think is awkward. Even though I understand that some people have kind of suffered a lot as a result of bad governance that we've experienced in Nigeria, but we should try as much as possible to caution ourselves and be careful of the use of the kind of language that we use in a constructive engagement. It's normal to criticize. That's why we have democracy. We can criticize each other. You can criticize me, I can criticize you. But constructive criticism is what we should be looking out for, not just attacking the person. Attack the argument and not the person. Same thing with when Chimamanda Adichie wrote her piece to the US government. Also, she has been attacked from two. I think Obedient attacked WS. Batified attacked Chimamanda Adichie. And then for Chimamanda Adichie, even someone said that it's a reflection of colonial mentality. And I was wondering, when the presidential candidates were visiting Chatham House to deliver their speech, was that not a reflection of colonial mentality when we have NIA in Nigeria and all of them are going to Chatham House? And none of them actually visited NIA to deliver their speech. So for me, we should focus more on issues-based conversation on social media. And let us not keep the country divided. Unity is important. I think what we need right now is unity. Yeah, we can criticize each other. We can But we can criticize each other, it's normal, but let us focus on the issues.
Okay, let's focus on the issues. Now, I'm going to ask you that more. It's one thing for people that might not necessarily be directly involved in terms of certain positions to verbally say certain things. Because, I mean, if we see a random person on Twitter saying that I do not agree with what Wole Soyinka is saying, and also, you know, says one or two things about him that is a bit derogatory, you know, that is one thing. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying that is one thing. But a situation whereby we now even have spokespersons of the candidates engaging in those direct verbal uncivil attacks. We've seen a lot of cases with a lot of spokespersons like a lot of spokespersons of these political parties and these candidates. They are also directly involved in cyberbullying, and not just the masses. So it's, in as much as we're trying to you know, tell the masses or tell the people to be more civil with their conversations, I also believe that the leaders need to be civil with their conversations. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we've seen this slow erosion of the prestige that used to come with, you know, being a former minister or being a spokesperson for a candidate. You know, all of that has eroded now, and people, you know, shockingly just take on positions that are absurd and say things that are hurtful. Now, you can say the obedience learnt it from these people, you know, after being served, you know, in those terms. You know, people are now, you know, fighting back. But again, I think it takes away from the richness of your argument when you have to, you know, direct to petty insults as opposed to staying on point. But that being said, you know, we've had a generation who have run this country aground, you know, and impoverished the youth of this country. Now, this same generation cannot be the one who's a stickler for respect. You know, this generation has really let us down. And I think it's teething problems that the obedience are having. I mean, this is probably the most active political movement we've had in this country since our fight for independence. So I wouldn't be quick, like Professor Wole Soyinka said, to link it to fascism or anything like that. You know, it's just young people whose emotions are boiling over, expressing themselves. And my appeal to them would be, you know, try and, you know, refine your argument and stick to your point. You know, anybody can call somebody, you know, bad words. It doesn't make you intelligent to do that.
All right. Now let's talk about the issue of fake news. It's almost becoming harder to fact check. People just can tweet just about anything, and if he has enough sentiment to it, it's going to go viral, right? We've seen a lot of materials out there. And some of these materials, I don't think it's in our place to ascertain whether this is an original material or this document obtained is true, but it's just all over social media space from the different sides of the divide. You know, you have one divide bringing up documents saying that, you know, president-elect is so and so, a drug baron, XYZ. On the other side, you also have documents where people are saying that, oh, Mr. Peter Obi, from the alleged leaked audio, is running a religious campaign, a lot of things, right? Now, the first question would be, which body or which people should we depend on to verify these facts? And then, secondly, how much of a due process should we allow? What is even the due process in terms of verifying this information, and what are the implications of eventually, like, this amount of information or these things going through those channels? Like, how competent are these bodies? Let's take, for example, obviously a court of law, the judiciary can say, oh, this evidence is substantial, so we're going to pass a verdict based on this evidence. So what do you have to say about that, Sheol?
Well, I would say the onus is on us as citizens to actually verify any information before we share it. Because, one, the polity is already being heated up, and then it won't be nice for us to contribute to the already heated up polity. Aside from that, there are simple ways to verify information. You can just, if it's a picture, you can just upload it using your Google Lens, and then if it has been used online before, you'll be able to see places where the pictures have been used before. And then secondly, there are a lot of even civil society organizations. I know CDD West Africa, they are doing a lot regarding fact checking. I know ICIR also, Africa Check, and so many other organizations that like that. They are doing a lot regarding fact-checking information, just to make sure that the information that gets to people are the true information. However, at times it's possible that fake news even spread faster than the original information itself, such that when the fact check or when the result of the fact check comes back, the people that have seen the fake news will not see the. Let's say, for instance, there is this issue of this man online. This man that was trying to say something about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not be sworn in on Ibom here, and then someone on Twitter linked the person to a TVC presenter or a TVC staff, which is not true. And then that's quite sad, and I'm not quite sure, but I think there's already a lawsuit on that already. So we should try and, as much as possible, to verify information before we share it. And those that are using the tool of propaganda to eat up the polity, it won't benefit any one of us at the end of the day. Why? Because if you can run away, you can't run away with every member of your family. So Nigeria is for all of us, and we should try as much as possible to keep it safe.
Now, talking about propaganda, because I'm happy you raised this. You know, some people believe, because we've seen a lot of, you just mentioned the man that was taken off of flights for mentioning obedience, and also for saying that the president-elect should not be sworn in. Now, on social media, we've seen several variations of the story. Now some people validate that particular story. Other people say it's a propaganda, and the APC had used this particular individual before. And even there was a previous video of the man wearing an obedience shirt in another location, and a lot of people were saying, oh, this is another propaganda, you know. So now, in such a situation, somebody neutral, how are we now supposed to know which one is the truth? You understand what I'm saying? So the issue of propaganda, and we've seen propaganda is not even something that is just Nigerian. I think it's international. Yeah. Even currently, President Trump is facing charges in America, and while he's going through all of that, he's raising money for his elections. A lot of people are paying money to his campaign just because they believe that the system is being unfair to the former president. You know, so that in itself is some sort of, you know, whatever is happening is also creating, they're using the opportunity to raise funds for his re-election, right? So it's not something that is just unique to Nigeria. But let's hit the nail on the head. How do we sort of manage propaganda?
I think journalists like yourself play a very important role in that, in terms of actual investigative journalism, not just regurgitating what we find. Okay, this person said this person. That's not, you know, it needs to go beyond that. And apart from that, we need to enforce the laws that we already have in place. Now, there's a huge discussion about what, Mr. Dati said on TV. But if we look back at previous elections, we've had candidates say things even worse. We've had spokespeople come out and say worse things, threaten different things at different points, but there was no follow-up. If that is indeed against our laws, then those people should have been persecuted back then. And that way we can prevent these kind of things from continuing. So we need to establish we're a country of laws, right? We need to follow our laws and ensure people who are pushing, false information are penalized. And then obviously journalists and individuals, like you said as well, obviously we have a duty of care as individuals. Before you share anything, before you even believe it, just a quick Google search, you discover half the things that you see in your WhatsApp chat are just nonsense.
Yeah, I understand. It's a very delicate and sensitive area that you've gone into, which is journalism, right? We've seen cases, obviously, Channels TV was fined 5 million naira for that video. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
Even beyond the established media houses, right? We have the blogs, right? And the traditional institutions that are laden with the responsibility of making sure that the right information goes out are under a body. And you see that in the bid to have fair and balanced views, it's almost like you're treading on a thin line. Because anything can happen. The NBC might just say, oh, this is from our own interpretation, it's not supposed to be. And that in itself, I think Christian Amampo once said it, the great journalist, that sometimes in the bid to have a very balanced opinion, we present false equivalency of the truth. But I think we're out of time. I think I'm just going to end it on that note. I would like to thank both of you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Any last words? Just last words, that all.
Well, the future is ours, and I think what the youth have started, it doesn't have to end now. This is something that we can trot on for the next 4 years and really pull together and change Nigeria as we hope to.
All right. Shehu?
Let me just say that one, I like the idea that we started with NSAS movement. Now we have a obedient movement, which is majorly championed by the youth. But I also like that we channel the same energy to hold our elected officials accountable on governance issues. So for instance, and then we've placed so much premium on the president. We've placed so much premium on the governors as well. We should try to also focus our agenda, focus our eyes on the legislatures as well, both at the National Assembly, at the State House of Assembly. Remember, for instance, there's a bill going on in the House of Rep right now saying that they will kind of if you're a medical doctor, you have to spend
a minimum of 5 years
before you get your before you get your certificate. So for instance, those are the kind of issues if we hold that man, for instance, accountable, or we are conscious of the kind of people that get elected to the National Assembly, I'm not sure those kind of bills will be sponsored in the first instance and then wasting taxpayers' money at the National Assembly.
All right, thank you very much. Hopefully the 10th Assembly will have a much more openness so we can be able to sort of interrogate everything that is happening in the House. But to you watching, before you tweet that thing, before you jump on the bandwagon, try your very possible best to fact check the authenticity of that particular information. As much as possible, we only have one country and we need to play our collective role in ensuring that we do not heat up the polity while we attack the issues. And to the young generation, I want to let you know that you have to keep the fire burning, but be as civil as possible. I am ready for your action. Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds, and we're having such a special edition today. It's the special Easter celebration edition right here on Rubbin Minds, and we've been having an interesting time. Before we went on the break, we're talking about cyberbullying and how we can sort of regulate the social media space so that this nation can, function as it should. And right now we want to move into another hot topic, and that is the current trending topic of the medical bill. As you might be aware, there's a bill that has passed the second reading in the House of Assembly, and that is the bill that medical doctors should practice for a minimum of 5 years before they leave the shores of this country. And this is part of the efforts to sort of see how we can control the huge migration of our very good hands into other countries. However, a lot of people have kicked against that, and we're just here to sort of sample the opinion of a very important professional. He is a public health physician. He's also the immediate past president of the Association of Resident Doctors, Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Dr. Samuel Kerinde, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so first of all, I've always wanted to be a medical doctor. Unfortunately, I wrote JAM several times and JAM jammed me.
Oh, sorry about that.
I was giving microbiology, so I studied microbiology. So just a bit close.
JAM also jammed me 5 times, but today I didn't give up. So I'm a doctor. I'm happy to be.
Amazing. So let's jump straight into it. What do you think of the bill?
Okay, let me start by saying I haven't seen the full content of the bill. But of course, the highlight is about let me use the word enslaving or holding back doctors young doctors, particularly from going abroad until they've practiced for 5 years. Of course, to curtail the epidemics of the brain drain that we have, I think that is very laughable because the issues that's leading people to want to travel or want to jackpot, as we use, has those problems been solved? All right. If you think that is the solution to the problem, I think that's probably just going to worsen that problem and demotivate them from giving their best, actually.
Okay. So what do you think the solution would be?
Okay. The solution would be, what are the problems? All right. And why are they leaving? I would say there are 3 major reasons why people leave. The first one is personal reasons. A spouse wants to travel maybe for studies, and then of course you can't leave your spouse. a doctor may go with that person. That's personal. Some people just want to leave the country that's personal. Then there's a professional reason why people go there. There are some trainings that you don't have in Nigeria. Residency, specialty you don't have. And they have to travel to get those skills. Of course, when they get those skills, then they come back. Those basically are professional reasons. And then there is a major one, which is the environmental factors, all right, which has to do with the country itself, the state of the country. Does the country actually have enough facilities to start with? Does that country actually take care of the workers, of the doctors? What is the state of the work environment of the doctors? What is their remuneration? Are they actually well compensated? Do they have welfare packages? Do they have equipment to work with? Do they have enough infrastructure to work with? So if you look at all of these things, are they secured? Now, we've had doctors that have been maimed, killed while they are, carrying out their duties, and there is nothing that has to do with, taking care of the families they leave behind. So if you look at all of this problem, the question is, has the Nigerian government actually solved any of these things? I'll tell you, no.
No.
So if the solution to curbing brain drain based on some of these factors that we've talked about is to keep them down, it simply means that at the end of the day, you're going to have some set of doctors that will be demotivated and probably will start resigning, or will at best not give their best.
And that is very dangerous.
Oh, trust me, doctor that is not current as it is right now. You see a doctor seeing hundreds of patients per day. There's a lot of burnout being recorded. You go to work by 8 o'clock, you see people doing calls almost back to back. By calls, I mean you resume work by 8 o'clock, by 4 o'clock you close, and you start another call by that 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. You don't go back home, you start to work the next day.
Wow.
So you can see, so when people say they go to a public hospital and then the doctors are not smiling, how would they, when that doctor, for example, has been running a marathon shift? They're not going to give you the best. And this bill, I can tell you, will worsen that, the situation that we currently have, which is the burnout situation.
And we definitely do not want demotivated doctors. One of the striking issues I think we've seen over the years is the fact that doctors are always going on strike, constantly demanding for a better welfare, and still nothing has been done. There was a particular argument on social media that says that to study medicine and surgery for the entire 7 years in Nigeria, you spend probably less than 2 million or 3 million, worst case scenario, for federal universities. And when you compare that to the education outside of the shores of this country, is much more expensive. And some people would want to argue that since we have some sort of subsidized education in Nigeria, and since the government has trained doctors with such a minimal budget, that the least doctors could do is to be patriotic to their country and sort of stay longer. Well, what do you have to say to that argument, that it's cheaper to study medicine in Nigeria? I
also think it's a fallacy to think that every doctor who is in Nigeria actually went to a federal university. And by saying it's subsidized, I would say it's not only medicine that is subsidized. Every other person that goes to school, other profession, also got subsidized medication. So that argument, of course, is null and void. Number two, when people finish a course of 7 years, to start with, last year we had 8 months. Upper year we had about 7 months. So you end up spending what we call 7 plus X. You've seen people who go into study medicine and they spend 10 years. An average course in university is 4 years. So if someone that has gone to school twice, and when you come out, the outcome, you look at the salary that is being paid, you find out that it's almost like you've just wasted your time. So if the argument is about subsidy, that is no. I just want to quickly say something that instead of putting this bill forward, why can't we look at the problems and solve it? And I was having a discussion with people outside and said, this year we budgeted 6 trillion naira for subsidy. How much have we budgeted for health in the last 10 years or more? We have never budgeted up to 10% of our annual budget. So if the government can budget more, can take care of the welfare of the health workers, not just doctors, health workers, can make their work environment comfortable enough, can pay them. I mean, look at the government stuff that a lot of people kill to serve in political position. It simply means that offices are quite juicy. Can you make health profession quite motivating And these are simple things. When you do that, I'm sure you won't need to bond them. People will naturally stay back and give in their best if those issues are sorted out.
I totally agree with you. The country, we're facing a lot of issues. Part of those issues is that we're in great debt. And it's almost as if there is no one sector that the government can put 100% attention, because while you're trying to concentrate on health, is infrastructure. While you're trying to concentrate on infrastructure, there's another aspect of the government that you need to, concentrate on. So how do you think we can have a middle ground? I think the demands of the doctors are very clear. They have been making these demands for a long time now. But with the current situation of things, with the deficits that we are running on in this nation, what do you think can be the middle ground? Because let's not forget, these people have the political power to actually enact this as a law. As a people, we have the power to kick against it, before it's being passed as a law. So with this current situation right now, we have the people on one side, we have the government officials on another side. How can we come to a middle ground?
Okay, so very, very important. There can be no development without proper investment in education and health. Development is directly linked to those two sectors. Education, if you invest massively in education, we are able to produce most of the things that we spend money importing. That indeed will help us. For health, if your people are not healthy, they can never be productive. If you don't have your people educated, now we're talking about a lot of Boko Haram. Those, if you look at them, a lot of those people are people who really has become like people who have actually not had access to education, and they become a how will I say, a bank for people like that to, a menace for people like that to recruit, and they become part of the Boko Haram. So if the government is not investing massively in education and also the health of these people, then of course we continue to be in the problem that we have. We won't have productive economy, and then, like I always want to say, we need political will. I think as Shane agrees, we also need to elect people. When we're having people coming to offices, we need to ask them, what are your plans? They need to categorically state what they have for those sectors, for health and for education, of course, while tackling other economic issues.
All right, thank you so very much, Dr. Samuel Okerinde. And we just hope that at the end of the day, everybody will be happy. The state of our government hospitals is just sad. And then the private hospitals are so expensive. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. And that's all we have for the show today. I hope you've had a very, very wonderful time with us. And once again, a happy Easter to you. This is Rubbin Minds, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.